My name is Josh Morgenthau. I'm the owner and operator of Fishkill Farms and Treasury Cider in East Fishkill in the Hudson Valley. It was started by my grandfather in 1913, Henry Morgenthau Jr., and he bought a few different farms, which is why we're still called Fishkill Farms, but it was originally a commercial orchard and dairy, and over the years we've sort of pared down what we grew for a while, and then in the past 10-15 years we've really expanded what we grow again. I'm a third-generation farmer, and it's been really critical to diversify what we grow, and direct market and pick your own has become a really important part of our business. And one of the most exciting new projects, relatively new projects, is hard cider. We are standing in our organic cider orchard. We have Brown Snout and Porter's Perfection cider apples. They're European bittersweet cider apples, grown organically. Unlike dessert apples, which can be okay for hard cider but won't really make a fantastic hard cider, some of these European bittersweet and heritage American cider apples have a lot more sugar and acid. I think the thing that makes Treasury Cider so unique is we are a working farm, Fishkill Farms. We grow all the apples that we ferment for Treasury Cider ourselves, so we can really control both the varieties that we're growing for cider, but also how they're grown, the practices. We're in our organic apple block now. We also have some eco-certified cider apples. There are trade-offs. Organic is not necessarily the best way to grow apples if you look at it from different perspectives, and we've, I think, really it's been a good decision to have some organic and some non-organic but environmentally friendly eco-certified apples. And by being able to work from flower, from bloom to harvest, to fermentation and bottling all on the farm, it gives us an amazing degree of control over every step of the production, and so we can actually grow the apples for fermentation, and there are different things that you do growing apples for hard cider and fermentation versus for fresh eating. So we fertilize them less, we pick them later, and those things all contribute to higher quality fruit, which means higher quality cider. There are a lot of challenges to growing organic fruit and making natural cider, hard cider from that fruit. We, in our organic orchard, and you can see my friends here are on pest control duty. They're in our organic orchard this time of year to eat some of the insects that are major pests of apples. But growing apples organically in the Hudson Valley in the Northeast is really difficult, and there are a whole range of different insect pests and diseases that we struggle with, and it's been a constant journey and learning experience to figure out how to best control those pests with a light touch, but still have a crop every year. Similarly, in the cidery, we try to do everything as naturally as possible with a minimum of intervention. So we try to use, only low levels of sulfur to make sure that we have a clean, stable product, and avoid additives and avoid a lot of filtration, unnecessary technology. And finding that balance, is difficult, because it means, if you're going to use lower levels of sulfur and you're not going to use a cultured yeast, you're going to let your juice ferment naturally, spontaneously, or with native yeasts. It's a little bit of a game of roulette, and some batches turn out amazing and some batches get funky, and so it's I'd say those are some of the big challenges. Those are also the parts of the job that are, I think, the most fulfilling, because it's a constant challenge and it never gets boring. So one of the cool things about farming organically and ecologically, especially with tree fruit, where, you know, unlike vegetables where you can rotate the crops from year to year and move them away from pests, in an organic orchard, in a perennial system, you have endemic pests that just live in the orchard, and basically from, you know, the beginning of May through harvest in September and October, the apples are like sitting ducks for a whole variety of pests and diseases. But one of the cool things is really combining old methods and new methods of farming to grow a good crop. So, you know, we don't spray any synthetic chemicals. We use all organic fertilizer in this orchard, our organic block. But we also have these mating disruption ties. There's essentially a block of rubber that's been impregnated with the pheromones, the mating pheromones of a few different major orchard pests. And by hanging them throughout our organic orchard, we actually disrupt the mating process and kind of confuse the male and female moths, and they won't end up finding each other and mating. And so that's a completely natural, organic, but fairly high-tech method of pest control. And so I think it's cool to, and the, you know, one of the things that excites me is finding good technology and good science-based solutions to growing apples and our other crops organically and sustainably. Right now we're standing in our experimental cider orchard, and we planted about 2,000 apple seeds from some of the best apples that we grow for hard cider. And the idea is really that we want to develop our own varieties that are more resistant to diseases and insects that are endemic to the Northeast. So a lot of the great cider apples are from Britain or France or Spain, and the weather conditions are just completely different there. And we can grow them here, but they take a lot more management than is ideal. So they still need to be sprayed, whether they're grown organically or ecologically or conventionally. But our idea is if we could take some of those varieties that have really, really good qualities for fermentation and hard cider and plant the seeds, we could develop new varieties that are suited to our farm here in the Hudson Valley. And so just a little like primer on apple biology. Apples are like humans in that each generation is completely different and may have some resemblances to its parents, but if you plant an apple seed from a Honeycrisp or a Macintosh, the tree that grows is not going to give you Honeycrisp or Macintosh. It's going to be much more like a wild apple or crab apple. But that tremendous variation, you know, from one generation to the next means that you can really, it's really fairly easy to develop new varieties. And the 2,000 seedlings that we have in here, they were planted last spring, started in our greenhouse and then planted out into the field. And this is sort of a nursery orchard. You know, the ones that do well will eventually transplant to wider spacing. These are about a foot apart. But this gives us a chance to see which ones are doing well, growing well. You know, they're not getting leaf diseases, they're not getting eaten by voles, and maybe some of these will make great hard cider someday. This is definitely a long-term project. I don't expect any of these trees to start producing fruit for another 6 or 7 years. But it is one of the fun things about producing tree-to-bottle hard cider, is that we can play around and really tackle the production of the fruit as part of the cider making process, and invest in projects like this that are, you know, multi-generational projects. So right now we're standing in front of our eco-certified cider apple block. So before we were in our organic cider apples, now we're in our eco-certified cider apples. A lot of the growing practices are pretty much the same. You can see the wood chip mulch that we use instead of herbicide. We are only fertilizing these with organic fertilizer, and we really don't have to spray them much, but some years there are pests or diseases that will wipe out our entire organic crop. And so what eco-certified means really is a lot of the conventional materials that orchards generally use that are really toxic are on our do not use list. We will never use them. But if there's a kind of low impact, kind of gentle fungicide or insecticide that we have to use once or twice a season to protect the crop, we will. And I think the result is a really great combination of sustainable growing practices and reliable production, which is important. If we lose our entire crop in a given year, it makes it pretty hard to stay in business. You can see we have trellis posts in here. These trees were planted last spring, so they've been growing really nicely. Pretty soon they'll get trellis wires, which will prevent them from cracking or falling over in the wind. And there's actually a few apples on these already, but we expect to really have a decent crop next year. So, this is a higher density planting. The trees are only a few feet apart, and one of the reasons to do that is that you get crop much earlier than lower density trees, an older fashioned orchard that might be planted 20 feet apart between trees. These are Tremlett's bitters. We have Harry Master's Jersey and Porter's Perfection and Dabinet and a bunch of other European bittersweet cider varieties in this planting.
Hi, I'm Chris Jackson. I'm a cider maker here at Treasury Cider on Fishkill Farms. This is our barrel aging room. As you can see, we have a lot of barrels in here, and this is mostly our specialty apples, stuff that's high in tannins, bitter sharps, things like that. We have a special elderberry combination that we're working on this year, and we also have 7 barrels worth of cider, which is a cider mead combo. Local honey is involved with those as well. We're very excited to see where those end up. And yeah, so we do most of our aging here. We do a little bit of fermentation in barrels, but most of our fermentation takes place in stainless steel tanks, which we'll go to next. So this is our new to us bottling line, and we have put it into practice about 3 times now over the past season, and so far so good. It's gone very well. It has a bottle washing component at the start, and then the bottler itself that fills the bottles, and a capper, which has been great because we used to do most of that manually, and that has made life much easier. And it's great for us with the whole treat a bottle philosophy that we like, because it literally finishes and starts right here, which has been great. So yeah, that's it. Thank you very much to the New York Cider Association. Thanks for listening. Have a great Hudson Valley Cider Week. We're very excited to be a part of it as usual here at Treasury, and we're really looking forward to what everyone else has to offer for us this time around. Thanks.
We're now on the back porch of our farm store building, and this is where customers can come to sample our ciders. We'll have our bar set up here for Cider Week, and throughout the season on weekends, Saturdays and Sundays, they can come and taste our ciders and enjoy this beautiful view. We're just in time for Cider Week releasing our 2018 harvest, so a full almost 2 years after harvest. And from left to right, we have our Homestead, which is our classic semi-dry cider. It's a mix of some dessert and culinary varieties and a little bit of quince and some bittersweet fruit, but really clean, simple, refreshing semi-dry cider. And then these two here is the Half Cent and Bernat, and these are both bottle conditioned, unfiltered. They're fermented with native yeast, not cultured yeast. And the half cent is a mix of russet apples, so golden russet, Roxbury russet, Ashmead's kernel, really dry, tart, kind of citrusy, crisp cider. And the Bernat is a little bit more full-bodied. It has some crab apples and other kind of deeper varieties. It's a little bit more of a ripe kind of orchard fruit, ripe red apple aroma. And they're both great to drink in the summer. The Bernat is definitely calls for food, and the half cent's great with food, but also on its own. And then moving to the right, we have our Counterpane and our Manu, and these are kind of experimental co-fermented fruit ciders. So the Counterpane is sweet and tart cherries grown on the farm that are co-fermented with our apples. And then the Manu, which is a completely new release for us this year, is a mix of green gage plums, apricots, and apples co-fermented, and some quince co-fermented. So really both bone dry fruit ciders, so they're not kind of sweet, saccharine fruit ciders. They're bone dry, very aromatic, and we're very happy with how they've turned out. It's kind of a new thing for us, but given that we grow not only apples, but cherries and plums and apricots and peaches and nectarines and pears, it's sort of naturally, we want to experiment with fermenting the different fruits together, and we've been happy with the results so far. So we're really excited for Cider Week. We have a great program of virtual tastings and a lot of cideries participating in Cider Week. Right now we're also at Fishkill Farms in the middle of strawberry season, so you can come to the farm and pick your own strawberries. Check out our website to make a reservation. And we'll also be opening our cider bar where you can get a flight of our ciders and get bottles to take home. Thank you to the New York Cider Association for putting such a great week of programming together, and thanks for joining us at Fishkill Farms and Treasury Cidery.